Intro you. Have you ever dealt with someone who makes everything about themselves? Someone who drains your energy, manipulates conversations, and leaves you feeling smaller somehow? You. If you've encountered a narcissist, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These interactions can leave you feeling frustrated, angry, and completely powerless. You. But what if I told you that over 2,000 years ago, a group of philosophers developed practical strategies for dealing with these exact personality types? Today, I'm sharing the Stoic approach to handling narcissists, an approach that's helped me maintain my sanity and reclaim my power in these challenging relationships. How the Stoics dealt with narcissists. You. Let's dive into the hidden Stoic technique that few people know about, but that could completely transform how you handle difficult personalities. 15. YouTube script segments, How Stoics Dealt with Narcissists. Segment 1. Understanding the problem. Before we get to the Stoic solution, let's understand what we're dealing with. Graphics showing characteristics of narcissistic behavior. Narcissists typically display an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, a lack of empathy for others, a fragile self-esteem beneath a confident facade. The modern term narcissist comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, a hunter known for his beauty who fell in love with his own reflection and ultimately died because he couldn't tear himself away from it. Show brief illustration of Narcissus at the pool. The Stoics didn't use the term narcissist, but they were intimately familiar with difficult, self-centered personalities. Roman philosopher Seneca served under Emperor Nero, perhaps history's most infamous narcissist, a man who literally had his own mother killed. Show image of Nero, then Seneca. So when we talk about Stoics dealing with narcissists, we're not speaking hypothetically. These philosophers developed their techniques while navigating relationships with some of the most dangerous and self-absorbed people in history. But here's where most modern advice goes wrong. Typical suggestions like, just cut them out of your life or stand up to them often fail because 1. Sometimes you can't avoid narcissists. They're your boss, family member, or co-parent. 2. Direct confrontation often backfires spectacularly. 3. Traditional conflict resolution assumes both parties care about resolution. Segment 2. The Stoic perspective. So what did the Stoics recommend? Their approach begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. The dichotomy of control. At the core of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control, the understanding that some things are within our control and others are not. As Epictetus wrote, quote on screen with ancient column graphics, some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. When dealing with narcissists, most people make the same critical mistake. They try to control what cannot be controlled. The narcissist's behavior, opinions, or self-awareness. Show graphic of person pushing boulder uphill. The Stoics would say this is like pushing a boulder uphill, exhausting and ultimately futile. Instead, the Stoics taught focusing exclusively on what you can control, your judgments, reactions, and boundaries. This is the foundation of the Stoic approach to narcissists. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, put it this way, quote on screen, You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Things can't shape our decisions by themselves. In other words, the narcissist's behavior only has the power you give it. The Stoics would say that by focusing on your own thoughts and reactions, rather than trying to change the narcissist, you regain control of the situation. Segment 3. The Hidden Stoic Technique. Now here's the powerful technique that few people talk about. The Stoics practice something I call psychological distancing, the ability to mentally step back and observe difficult personalities with detached curiosity rather than emotional reactivity. Graphics showing the concept of psychological distance. You. This isn't about physical distance, it's about emotional distance. Here's how it works. You. First, the Stoics would remind themselves that the narcissist's behavior reflects their own internal struggles, not your worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, quote overlay, You. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. You. He wasn't being cynical. He was practicing compassion through understanding. The Stoics recognized that narcissistic behavior comes from a place of insecurity and faulty beliefs. You. Second, they practiced what modern psychologists call cognitive reframing. When faced with narcissistic behavior, they would ask, text overlay with questions. What virtue can I practice in this situation? How can I protect my tranquility? What would the ideal Stoic do in this moment? You. This shifts you from victim mentality to a position of agency. Instead of being trapped in reaction, you become the observer choosing how to respond. You. Finally, and this is the key most people miss, the Stoics would use narcissistic encounters as training grounds for their own character development. Show training by workout metaphor. Epictetus said, every difficulty in life presents us with an opportunity to turn inward and to invoke our own inner resources. The greater the difficulty, the greater the opportunity for growth. In other words, narcissists become your unwitting teachers, showing you precisely where your boundaries need strengthening and where your emotional reactions need tempering. Segment 4. Practical application. Let me show you how this works in practice. Imagine a narcissistic coworker who constantly takes credit for your work. Split screen showing two reactions. The typical reaction is anger, confrontation, or complaining to others, all of which either escalate conflict or drain your energy without changing the situation. The Stoic approach would be numbered list appearing. 1. Observe without immediate reaction. Notice your emotional response, but don't act from it. 2. Apply the dichotomy of control. You can't control your coworker taking credit, but you can control how you document your contributions and communicate them to leadership. 3. Reframe the situation. Instead of this person is stealing my success, think this person's need for validation reveals their insecurity and gives me an opportunity to practice assertiveness without aggression. 4. Choose a response that maintains your tranquility. This might mean calmly correcting the record, developing better documentation practices, or in some cases, accepting that the truth will eventually become evident. This approach has 3 major benefits. Graphics showing each benefit. First, it preserves your emotional energy instead of depleting it in futile power struggles. Second, it keeps you focused on what actually matters, your work and character, rather than getting distracted by someone else's dysfunction. Third, and most importantly, it prevents you from accidentally adopting narcissistic behaviors yourself in response, something that happens surprisingly often in these interactions. Segment 5. The ultimate Stoic secret. But there's one more level to the Stoic approach that truly sets it apart, and it's counterintuitive. Dramatic pause. The ultimate Stoic secret to dealing with narcissists is genuine pity. Not contempt disguised as pity, not condescension, but actual compassion for someone trapped in a prison of their own making. Seneca wrote, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. The Stoics understood that narcissists, beneath their grandiose exterior, live in constant fear of being exposed as inadequate. Their need for validation is insatiable because it comes from external sources rather than internal virtue. This understanding doesn't mean you tolerate abuse or manipulation, but it allows you to respond from a place of strength rather than reactive emotion. You, when you truly grasp that the narcissist is psychologically imprisoned while you remain free to choose virtue regardless of circumstances, you've discovered the most powerful position possible. Show visual metaphor a person standing calmly while storm rages around them. Segment 1. Introduct to the narcissist problem. Have you ever dealt with someone who makes everything about themselves? Someone who always needs to be the center of attention, takes credit for your work, and somehow turns every conversation back to how amazing they are? If so, you've likely encountered a narcissist. Today, we're diving into how ancient Stoic philosophers, people who lived over 2,000 years ago, developed incredibly effective strategies for dealing with these exact personality types. And the best part? Their approach is completely different from what most modern advice tells you to do. I'm going to share the hidden Stoic technique for dealing with narcissists that few people know about. A technique that doesn't require confrontation, doesn't drain your energy, and actually gives you back your power. Let's get started. Segment 2. Recognizing the narcissist. Before we dive into Stoic solutions, let's make sure we're identifying narcissism correctly. True narcissists typically display an inflated sense of self-importance, constant need for excessive admiration, sense of entitlement, exploitation of others, lack of empathy, and beneath it all, fragile self-esteem. It's important to distinguish between someone who's just having a self-centered moment versus a pattern of narcissistic behavior. The Stoics were particularly concerned with recognizing patterns rather than isolated incidents. As Seneca wrote, many men might have attained wisdom had they not thought they had already attained it. The Stoics recognized that narcissism stems from a profound misunderstanding of one's place in the world, a false belief that one's own importance exceeds all others. Segment 3. The Stoic view of narcissism. The Stoics had a unique perspective on narcissistic behavior. They didn't see it as a personal attack, but rather as a manifestation of faulty reasoning. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil." This isn't cynicism, it's realism paired with compassion. The Stoics understood that narcissists are operating from a flawed understanding of what brings true happiness and fulfillment. They're chasing external validation rather than internal virtue. To the Stoics, the narcissist isn't an enemy to be defeated, but a misguided soul who has mistaken power, prestige, and admiration for the true goods of life: wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Segment 4. The dichotomy of control. At the heart of the Stoic approach to narcissists is what philosopher Epictetus called the dichotomy of control, understanding what we can control and what we cannot. Epictetus taught, some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. When dealing with narcissists, most people make a critical mistake. They try to control what cannot be controlled: the narcissist's behavior, opinions, or self-awareness. This leads to frustration and emotional exhaustion. Instead, the Stoics would focus exclusively on what they can control: their own judgments, reactions, and boundaries. This simple shift in focus changes everything about how you interact with narcissistic people. Segment 5. Psychological distancing. The Stoics practiced a technique I call psychological distancing, the ability to mentally step back and observe difficult personalities with detached curiosity rather than emotional reactivity. Marcus Aurelius advised, When jarred unavoidably by circumstances, revert at once to yourself and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help. You'll have a better grasp of the harmony if you keep going back to it. You. In practical terms, when faced with narcissistic behavior, the Stoic would mentally step back and observe both the narcissist and their own emotional reaction, as if watching from a distance. This creates space between stimulus and response. You. This psychological distance allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally, giving you a position of strength that the narcissist cannot undermine. Segment 6. Reframing narcissistic encounters. You. The Stoics were masters of reframing difficult situations as opportunities. When dealing with narcissists, they would ask, "You, what virtue can I practice in this situation? How can I use this as training for my character? What would the ideal Stoic do in this moment?" You. Epictetus taught his students, "Every difficulty in life presents us with an opportunity to turn inward and to invoke our own inner resources. The greater the difficulty, the greater the opportunity for growth." You. By reframing narcissistic encounters as training grounds rather than burdens, you transform what could be a depleting experience into one that actually strengthens your character and resilience. Segment 7. The power of indifference. You. One of the most powerful Stoic techniques for dealing with narcissists is cultivating what they called indifference toward things outside your control. You. This doesn't mean not caring at all. It means recognizing that the narcissist's opinions, approval, criticisms, and manipulations have no inherent power over your happiness or well-being unless you grant them that power. You. As Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Some things are up to us and some are not up to us." You. When you truly internalize that the narcissist's behavior reflects their own internal struggles rather than your worth, their ability to manipulate your emotions dramatically diminishes. Segment 8. Maintaining boundaries with narcissists. You. The Stoics understood the importance of boundaries, though they didn't use that specific term. They practiced what we might call virtuous assertiveness. You. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach." You. This principle guided Stoic interactions. They were selective about who they spent time with and how they engaged. With narcissists, a Stoic would, you, set clear boundaries without emotional justification, enforce consequences consistently, and limit engagement to necessary interactions while protecting their inner tranquility throughout. Segment 9. Avoiding the narcissist's traps. You. Narcissists typically employ predictable strategies to maintain control, seeking attention and admiration, provoking emotional reactions, creating drama, and manipulating through guilt or obligation. You. The Stoics would identify these traps and deliberately avoid falling into them. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You. When a narcissist tries to provoke you, the Stoic response is not to engage on their terms, but to pause, recognize the trap, and choose a response that maintains your tranquility and dignity. You. This might mean giving a brief, neutral response in changing the subject, acknowledging their statement without emotional investment, not engaging with provocations at all. Segment 10. The Stoic art of strategic disengagement. You. The Stoics practiced what we might call strategic disengagement, knowing when and how to remove yourself from unproductive interactions. You. Seneca advised, "We should always allow some time to elapse, for time discloses the truth. A properly trained mind is always ready to withdraw from what offends it." You. This isn't about avoiding all difficult situations, but about recognizing when an interaction with a narcissist has crossed into territory that serves no constructive purpose. You. Strategic disengagement might mean physically leaving a heated situation, changing the subject away from the narcissist's preferred topic, or mentally disengaging while maintaining necessary physical presence. Segment 11. Practicing verbal self-defense. You. The Stoics were skilled at what we might call verbal self-defense, responding to narcissistic tactics without becoming reactive or emotional. You, when faced with criticism, blame, or gaslighting from a narcissist, a Stoic would. You, pause before responding, separate facts from interpretations, refuse to defend against unjust accusations, speak with calm authority rather than defensive emotion, and use questions rather than statements when appropriate. You, as Epictetus taught, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would have mentioned those also. This kind of response completely disarms the typical narcissistic attack. Segment 12. Cultivating inner strength. You. The Stoics knew that effectively dealing with narcissists requires significant inner strength. They practiced daily exercises to build this resilience. You. Marcus Aurelius started each day by reminding himself, begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. You. This wasn't pessimism, but mental preparation, like an athlete visualizing challenges before a competition. Other Stoic practices included you, daily reflection on your own virtues and areas for improvement, contemplating worst-case scenarios to reduce their emotional impact, negative visualization, and practicing minor discomforts to build resilience against larger ones. Segment 13, the power of genuine pity. You, perhaps the most counterintuitive Stoic technique for dealing with narcissists is cultivating genuine pity for them, not contempt disguised as pity, but actual compassion. You, Seneca wrote, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. You, the Stoics understood that narcissists, beneath their grandiose exterior, live in constant fear of being exposed as inadequate. Their need for validation is insatiable because it comes from external sources rather than internal virtue. You. When you truly grasp that the narcissist is psychologically imprisoned while you remain free to choose virtue regardless of circumstances, you've discovered the most powerful position possible. Segment 14. Practical examples in daily life. You. Let's apply these Stoic principles to common narcissistic scenarios. You. In the workplace with a credit-stealing colleague, rather than becoming resentful, document your contributions clearly, focus on the quality of your work rather than recognition, and develop relationships with those who matter beyond this one difficult person. You. With a narcissistic family member during gatherings, prepare mentally before interactions, have predetermined time limits, identify specific virtues to practice during the encounter, and have support systems in place for afterward. You. In co-parenting with a narcissistic ex, focus entirely on your children's well-being rather than winning against the other parent. Document everything without emotional commentary and channel energy into being the stable, consistent parent your children need. Segment 15. The ultimate Stoic secret. You. The ultimate Stoic secret for dealing with narcissists lies in a fundamental Stoic principle. Virtue is the only true good, and it cannot be taken from you by anyone. You. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. When you truly internalize this, the narcissist's manipulations lose their power over you. You. To summarize the Stoic approach to narcissists, focus exclusively on what you can control, your judgments and responses. Practice psychological distancing to observe rather than absorb their behavior. Use difficult encounters as opportunities to strengthen your character. Respond from compassion rather than reactive emotion. You. These techniques won't change the narcissist. That was never the goal. But they will change how their behavior affects you, giving you back your power and peace of mind. In a world that often rewards narcissistic behavior, practicing these Stoic principles is a radical act of self-liberation. Conclusion. You. To summarize the Stoic approach to narcissists. 1. Focus exclusively on what you can control, your judgments and responses. 2. Practice psychological distancing to observe rather than absorb their behavior. 3. Use difficult encounters as opportunities to strengthen your character. 4. Respond from compassion rather than reactive emotion. These techniques won't change the narcissist. That was never the goal.